Okay guys, we're going to get started on this worksheet. I'm going to work through some of these with you, and then you will hopefully work through the remaining problems on your own. And at the end of the worksheet here, the answers are all given to you. So it's kind of up to you on how much effort and you know how much effort you put in. But I hope that you give it your full effort. So anyway, we're going to start off by looking at this document. This is available under lesson 1, and you should download this. You don't have to print it. You can print it if you would like, but if you just want to keep it up on your screen and work out the problem. So a couple things you're going to need. One, you're going to obviously need the worksheet. You will need a calculator here because we're going to be taking some square roots. So I've got just my computer's calculator up that you can see, and we'll be working through these together. So the first asks you if these lengths form a right triangle. So basically, the way I think about these problems is if with these measurements, in other words, if a squared plus b squared does in fact equal c squared, then we say yes, this is a right triangle. If the measurements do not work, if a squared plus b squared does not equal, that it is not a right triangle. So when you look at number 1, that we want to determine, is this a right triangle? It looks like a right triangle, but we've got to use the measurements here to prove whether it is a right triangle or not. So we need to find the legs. To find the legs, we have to find the right angle. So the right angle we would assume is here, and the reason we are assuming that is because the 6 and the 8 are always the shortest sides of the right triangle. So the 6 and the 8 represent the shortest sides of the right triangle. And then this 9, that's going to be your hypotenuse. So I want to know, does 6 squared plus 8 squared equal 9 squared? If it does, if they're equal to each other, then we say that this is a right triangle. If 6 squared plus 8 squared does not equal 9 squared, then we would say this is not a right triangle. So I worked this out, and I'm just going to show you real quick. It might be hard for you to see, but I see that 6 squared is equal to 36, and I see that 8 squared is equal to 64, and I know that 9 squared is equal to 81. So if I add 36 plus 64, that does not equal 81, that equals 100. Therefore, this triangle, on number 1, this triangle, we would say no, this is not a right triangle because a squared plus b squared does not equal c squared. 6 squared, that's 36, right? Plus 8 squared, that's 64. 36 plus 64 equals 100. 9 squared equals 81. So if this was not, since this is 81 and not 100, we know this is not a right triangle. All right, let's move to number 2. So number 2, we've got the same scenario. I've got a right triangle. I will assume that the right angle is here, and the reason I do that is because the 5 and the 12 are the shortest sides, which means those are the legs. With those being the legs, the right angle must be right here, which means the side that says 13 is the hypotenuse. All right, 13 is your hypotenuse, 5 is a leg, 12 is a leg, and our job is to figure out, is this in fact a right triangle? So what we do is we literally plug these numbers into the Pythagorean theorem. For the a squared, I can use either the 5 or the 12, it does not matter. For the b squared, I'm going to use either the 5 or the 12, but I'm going to use the opposite of whatever I use for the a squared. So in this situation, I want to know, does 5 squared plus 12 squared, does that equal 13 squared? In other words, is this a Pythagorean triple? Does 5 squared plus 12 squared equal 13 squared? So that's what we're trying to do. So we can kind of work this out, like 5 squared, just in our minds, in our heads, and I'm going to show you a diagram in a second. But 5 squared, that would be 5 times 5, right? So 5 squared is equal to 25. 12 squared, that's 12 times 12, that's equal to 144. And 25 plus 144 together, that equals 169. So then we would ask ourselves, what is 13 squared? Well, 13 squared, that's 13 times 13, and you can multiply that out. 13 times 13 is 169. Therefore, a squared plus b squared was equal to c squared. And so that means that this was a right triangle. So I'll just show you the work real quick for number 2. So I've got up here, I've got, oh, that's number 1. Number 2 is right here. So 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. 5 squared is equal to 25. 12 squared is equal to 144. Add those together, I get 169. 169 equals 169. Therefore, this is a Pythagorean triple, or that means this is a right triangle. So again, number 1 was not a right triangle because a squared plus b squared did not equal c squared. Number 2 is a right triangle because a squared plus b squared was equal to c squared. So I want you guys to do number 3 and number 4. And of course, as you do number 3 and number 4, you can check your work at the end of this worksheet. I do encourage you, please do not just go to the end of the worksheet. Please try the problems. Try them yourselves. That's the only way that you'll be actually learning here. So make sure that you're doing that. All right, we're going to skip down and look at number 5 and number 6. So number 5 and 6 are just like 1 through 4, except for we actually don't have a picture of a triangle. So they just give us the A and the B and the C. And so what we need to understand is that the A and the B, these represent the legs, and C is obviously the hypotenuse. Same way for number 6. A and B, these are the legs, right? And then C is going to be the hypotenuse, all right? So we're going to do A squared plus B squared and see if that's equal to C squared. And the same for number 5. I'm going to do 6.4 squared, or 6.4 to the second power, plus 12 to the second power. And I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to find out what is that sum. And I'm going to see if the sum is equal to just C squared by itself. And so I did that work, and I'll show it to you. So for number 5, I got that number 5 is not, all right, it is not a right triangle. And the reason it's not a right triangle is because you can see right here, that's number 6. On number 5, you can see, where is it at? Come on. You can see 6.4 squared plus 12 squared is equal to 184.96. And then if you do the 12.2 squared, then that's equal to 148.84. So they are not equal. So it's not a right triangle. It's not a right triangle because a squared plus b squared was not equal to c to the second power, or c squared. Now, on number 6, and I would encourage you, go ahead and pause the video if you would like and try number 6. I want you to test this out. See if a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. In other words, is 2.1 to the second power plus 7.2 to the second power. Is that sum equal to 7.5 to the second power? So go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm assuming you did that on your own. So we're going to look at number 6. And on number 6, I got yes. All right, so on number 6, I said that number 6 was a yes. And the reason it's a yes is because 2.1 squared is 4.41 plus 7.2 squared is 51.84. And together, that adds up to 56.25. And 56.25 is 7.5 squared. So again, that is a yes. That is a yes. All right, I'm going to pause for a second and kind of get ready for the last part. Okay, guys, we're back at it on number 7. Number 7, they give us a right triangle. The reason I know it's a right triangle is I see the little square here. This means this is a right angle. I've got a side that is 4. I'm sorry, I have a leg that is 4, a leg that is 8, and we're trying to find the missing side. So that means we're trying to find this hypotenuse. So basically, we know the Pythagorean theorem is a squared, or 4 squared in this case, plus b squared, which is equal to 8 squared. So 4 squared plus 8 squared is going to equal c squared. We do not know what c is equal to, but we can work in reverse to figure that out. So when I'm looking at this example, I've got literally, okay, where is it at? All right, I've got 4 squared plus 8 squared is equal to c squared. You see that 4 squared is equal to 16, 8 squared is equal to 64, and if we add those together, that's going to equal c squared. So now I just need to take the square root of 80 to figure out what c is equal to. In other words, if c to the second power is equal to 80, if c to the second power is equal to 80, if I find the square root, that's going to give me what the measurement of this side is. So I'm going to go back to my calculator, and I basically need to know the square root of 80. So I'm going to say square root of 80, and I'm going to press enter. And why does that say 80? I need to find the square root of 80. And that gives me 8 points, is on number 7. All right, that side, that last side, I would find by doing the square root of 80. So the square root of both sides. I'll put this back up. We're doing the square root of both sides. Where is it at? The square root of both sides. So the square root of c squared is c, and the square root of 80 is that 8.9. So what we get is we get c is equal to 8.9. All right, we get c is equal to 8.9, or 8 9/10. And so basically, so to summarize how you do this strategy, if you're trying to find the hypotenuse and you know both of the legs, you're literally going to take this leg and square it, and take this leg and square it. Add those two together. So 4 squared plus 8 squared. So 4 squared, the sum was 80. All right. Well, 80 is equal to the hypotenuse squared. So we've got to undo that. We've got to undo that squaring. And the way we undo that squaring is to take the square root. So the square root of 80 gives us 8.9. And that's where we would get the hypotenuse. So you're going to do those on 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And through that, you'll hopefully get some of those. And we're going to work through those together.